Viking Cruises have a reputation for being these incredible premium luxury experiences. What's it like being on a Viking cruise? Well, I took my very first one on the Viking Star that sailed through Greece and Turkey, and I have the scoop for you, and oh my, you're not going to want to miss it. Coming up. What made us choose Viking, and in specific, the Viking Star? Viking had a cruise, Ancient Treasures of the Mediterranean. We started off in Athens. The cruise itself was about 8 days, and then we also purchased 3-day extensions on both sides. So we purchased a 3-day extension on Athens. So we got there 3 days before the cruise started. The cruise started, and then we sailed all the way to the end of Istanbul, and we had 3 days in Istanbul. So within the cruise, it was started out in Athens, like I mentioned, in Port Piraeus. We sailed there to Heraklion, the island of Crete. And then from Crete, we went over to the island of Rhodes in Greece. From Rhodes, we went over to the Turkish side with a stop on the port city of Kusadisi so that we could see the ruins of Ephesus in Kusadisi. And then from Kusadisi, we sailed over to the port city of Çanakkale or Sanakkale, where you can see the ruins of Troy. From there, we went over to the mighty and magical city of Istanbul. And so that was essentially the cruise. It was on, like I mentioned, the Viking Star, which is an ocean cruise liner. It was a cruise liner that's a little bit smaller than your mega cruise liners like, Celebrity or Norwegian, much smaller than that. I'm not going to talk about price in this video, but I do talk about price on an article that I wrote. If you want to visit my website, thewholetraveler.com, I talk about the price in explicit detail, break it down into 4 different price components. But if you want to know about the pre-registration, also it's in that article. I go into explicit detail about really important things that you have to be aware of. We purchased our air tickets through Viking. They bundled it all together in a way that gave us a really nice discount. The airfare, we chose business class tickets. The airfare with the discount came out to be slightly lower than what we would book ourselves. The one thing I wasn't crazy about was that we flew out of the New York City metro area. We flew out of Newark, which is a massive global hub around the world. So why it wasn't direct, that was a little, we had a connection. We flew on Lufthansa from Newark to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to Athens. And then on the way back, it was Istanbul to London, London to New York, to Newark. So that was a little weird that we couldn't get direct back and forth because there's direct flights to each. But in the end, I'm not going to complain too hard about that because Viking states on their literature that they cannot guarantee that you will be able to get air miles based on the class of ticket they have. So they do, that's in writing, and you can read it in your carriage or contract or contract services. It's in there, but we did get the miles. So I'm not going to complain about the connections because of the connections, we got a lot more miles, air miles to our #1 Star Alliance. Also, the connections, it was a cruise that we took in December. I was concerned about the connections, like would we make them because it's onset of winter and it's like traveling through Frankfurt Airport. Frankfurt Airport, I'm traumatized by. But what surprised me was that when we were making the transfer, we got out, we deplaned, and the app tells you have it's like a 5-minute walk or 10-minute walk, which it wasn't. It was like a 25-minute walk. But as we're walking to get to the next connection gate, there's an actual Viking person with a red vest, with a red sign saying, "I'm a Viking agent. Are you a Viking? You a Viking?" And so we're like, "Yes, we're with Viking." And he had our name on a clipboard. He's like, "Okay, this is what you need to do. You need to go straight. You need to turn right. You need to go up some stairs. You're going to see passport control. Just go through the passport control, get it stamped, and then you'll be on the other side, and your gate will be right there waiting for you. You want to get there by the boarding time. You have plenty of time. Don't rush. You're going to get there in time. It's good." Obviously, I'm a seasoned traveler, and I know how to make the transfers. But if you don't know how to do that, that was extremely helpful. And so I was genuinely surprised by that level of service. That is a high level of service to have a transfer assistant essentially help you make the transfer. If you're someone who's immobilized or you don't move very fast and you need like one of those golf carts to help you through, that's an incredibly helpful service because he had a walkie-talkie. He could call, he could reach out to people to make the transfer even more expeditious if you did have problems. And so I noticed that that was a huge plus on Viking's side, which I was pleasantly surprised about. I was genuinely impressed. That really impressed me. And I was like, you know, that's a really good start to the vacation. We had plenty of time in our connection. We actually were able to go to the lounge, charge our phones, have something to eat. And then from there, we went to our gate. The gate was a little slow. It took a really long time to get to the actual plane. But by the time we got there, the plane ride happened. We landed without incident. We went to get our luggage in Athens. We went to the carousel. The carousel took a long time to get the luggage. That kind of, you know, if you're doing the Viking Star, Ancient Treasures of the Mediterranean, prepare for a long wait for your luggage on that carousel. But of course, that's not Viking's fault. We got the luggage, we clear customs, and as we get into the arrivals hall, there is a welcoming committee from Viking. There's two people. They have the flag, they have the red vest. You can't miss them. They're right there. And we went, we said our names. They checked us off. They're like, go have a seat right over here as everybody comes. It was so orderly. It was so clean and efficient. We all boarded the bus. The bus was nice. It was a luxury liner bus, velvet seats, or I guess synthetic velvet seats. Velour seats. We took, you know, from the airport, we took a ride directly to the hotel. And then another agent came in, because remember, we had the extension. So we had a 3-day extension before we were getting ready to board the ship. So we went to the hotel with a lot of other people who did the 3-day extension. So we arrive at the hotel, which was the Marriott. And again, I have separate videos on the extensions and I have separate videos on each day of the trip. This is just gonna be focused on the actual Viking experience. There was an agent who came, as our bus parked at the hotel, which was at the Marriott in Athens, there was an agent who came in and gave us a welcome spiel, basically saying, we have a welcome desk. Viking has a welcome desk at the hotel to answer any inquiries or questions that you have. And they essentially made the process as painless as it could possibly be. It was easy, 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 easy. The day of embarkation, they gave us all very clear instructions on what we needed to do. The times that we needed to have our luggage out in front of the hotel, in front of our hotel door, making sure that we had all of our, everything that we needed. It was all answered. Those desk agents at the hotel were amazing. Those Viking agents at the hotel were amazing. They were extremely helpful. Our luggage went onto the bus. We went to the port. We get to the port and we come out and there's people guiding us all along. We get inside the port in Athens and I see this long line and my heart sinks. And I'm not gonna lie. I take a look at that line and there are some pretty... It's like, who are these people? God, there was some rough trade in that line, right? But then the guy turns around, he's like, this is not your line. This is your line. And there's a completely separate area that's like red carpeted. There's like bottles of water. There's like Viking signs. That other line was for all the other passenger ships. And then there was this separate VIP Viking station. And I was like, this is amazing. It was like first class. There was no line. You just simply walk up. There was like maybe 20 Viking or 20 port immigration officials. We give them our passports. They took our passports, which was surprise number one, and they didn't give us the passports back. She explained in English that I didn't really understand, but essentially, you're gonna get your passport back at Rhodes once we get ready Once we are ready to exit Greece is when you get your passports back, because they have to stamp the exit stamp on your passport that you're leaving the EU. So you get them back on Rhodes, which was the final leg of exiting Greece. She didn't explain that very well, but guest services at one point did. She gives you a chit, which is like a little coat tag. You need that. Don't lose that, because that's what's going to get your passport back. And she also gives you your Viking ID card. And then you also get your Viking excursion tickets. And so you're definitely going to want to check to make sure that all the excursions you booked for in the pre-registration are there. And if they're not, you need to go directly to guest services immediately to correct it. Fortunately for us, everything was in order. We had no problems. So we took our suitcases, and you have to go through scanners, metal detectors. We went through the medical detector, our suitcases went through the scanners, and there was a red flag. I had scissors because, you know, I'm a scrapper, I'm a crafter. I like to collect things and cut them out and put them in notebooks and make my notes. That's what I do. It's part of like my art, part of my writing, part of my reporting. They're like, no, you can't take these with you. They gave me some receipt and they said, you can get them back later. I'm like, how? We're leaving Greece, but she didn't explain that to me. And so I was like, okay, I'll just make sure to ask guest services. So we clear those passport things. We clear that passport control, the customs control, we clear all, and we move towards the ship. And then you see the glorious red tent, that famous red tent. It has a red carpet rolled out for you. There's fruit and there's bottled water that they have. There's somebody that welcomes you. You come aboard, you scan your card, and it's so exciting. And then you have somebody who's offering you a fresh towel to wipe your hands and face. And then you're immediately sent to, I think, the second floor for safety training. You gotta get the safety training. The safety training is so easy. She's like basically teaches you how to put on a life vest. That's essentially the training. And if there's any emergency, this is where you come. This is what you do. You put on the vest. This is how you tie it on. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay, great. You're certified. So of course, you know, there is an emergency and you come down, you get your vest, you have to follow the instructions that the crew gives you to board the life vessels, obviously. And there's also a video that they want you to watch. It's also a very quick video that's in your cabin that you can watch. And so we arrived there at about, I want to say got on the ship around 11 o'clock in the morning. We were one of the first people there. And so that was really exciting. We got to cruise the ship. We got to, you know, explore. We explored all the different nooks and crannies. And this was immediately one of the things I loved about Viking was they have so many different areas of the ship to walk around, and they're really nice. Everything, I know that the ship isn't new. I know that the ship is not even close to being new, but everything I saw looked new. It all looked super refreshed. There were no, and I was actively looking for chips and nicks and worn out, because you see all of that when you go to the first class lounges in airlines. You know, you see where the divot in the sofa cushions. You see the fraying of the materials on the carpets or the sides of the couch or the chips on the wood. You see all of that at the lounges, but I did not see that here. Every single piece of furniture that I examined, I was like, I've got to find something. Look, there was nothing. That entire place was really pristine, really pristine. It was as you want it, and that genuinely impressed me. There was a slowness and a beautiful, elegant ambiance, a peaceful, serene ambiance everywhere we went. And then the ship began to fill up a little bit more. And as it filled up, it still felt serene. It still felt calm. And I think this is one of the gifts of a Viking experience, is that it does skew much older. It's an adult-only cruise. And I noticed that the people skewed in their 60s and their 70s. And it really created a nice, calm, serene vibe. There were no children running around, thank God. There were no large family clans, roving around in packs there was none of that. It was calm, it was serene. And it's not just an older clientele that inhabits these Viking cruises, it's an older, educated Viking crowd. And that's also key. These are some really cultured people. They love history, they love archaeological artifacts, they love art, and they're there for those things. And so you have a polished crowd of people who behave accordingly. And it was so nice and so wonderful and refreshing. And it was like that from start to finish. After that, we went over to the World Cafe. The World Cafe during embarkation, I think, is the only place that we saw that was open. I think they had the grills that might have been open, but the World Cafe is basically where it's at on the day of embarkation. There's a lot to eat. There was tons of spreads. We got, what we wanted. I think we got pizza that first time because we also wanted to go and explore Athens in the afternoon. So we wanted to get something very quick to eat. And as we were eating, they made an announcement on the overhead that the rooms were available. Viking promises to have the rooms available by 2 p.m. on the day of embarkation. They were an hour early for us. And so we were really, really happy about that. So that meant that we could finish up eating. We could go to our rooms and kind of just freshen up, check it out, and then leave. They also had, which was really nice, they had shuttle buses from the port all the way to the city center. And so we wanted to take advantage of that for the afternoon and the evening to go and explore more of Athens. And that's exactly what we did. And so first, the room. The room, oh my God. The rooms are 100% true to what you see in the advertising. Whatever videos that you've seen, whatever videos I saw and the pictures that they show on the actual Viking website match 100%. I always expect, I'm like, okay, you see these beautiful glossy pictures and you're like, tone it down because in reality, it's not gonna be like that. It's gonna be worn out. Again, everything looked brand new. There was not a single nick anywhere on that furniture in our room. It was perfect. It was exactly like we were expecting it to be from the advertisements. It was phenomenal. And I love the way that the room is configured. There's spaces that are under the bed where you can just roll your suitcases right under, giving you more closet space. They had a really nice level of dressers, and the closet, my husband was closer to the bed, and so he got kind of all the closet space because it was kind of weird to like move around in there. That was a little, but we made it work. It was fine. It wasn't a big deal. They have a safe to put all your valuables in, which was great. The bathroom was amazing. Oh my God, the bathroom was amazing. They had a heated floor, I think. They had toiletries that were actually good. They were really solid quality. Freya, I think, is the toiletries. That was really solid quality toiletries. They put some money into that, and that was really good. The shampoos, the creams, the moisturizers, the cleansers, it was all really, really good. I loved the cabinet spaces where you could put stuff on the cabinets. They had really nice countertop spaces, and they also had a nice toilet area where you could do your business and not feel like scrunched. That was also good. The showers were great. They had a shower clothesline where you could hang stuff up if you had a wetsuit that you wanted to dry out. It was fantastic. We were the aft of the ship, and so we had a view of the back, and oh my God, I am such a believer of aft cabins in the aft. I loved that. Number one, the rooms are all soundproof. At least ours was soundproof. We didn't hear anything from anyone. But also in the aft, you have you're separated by a private hallway. So you're not gonna have a lot of traffic, which was wonderful. And then your balcony, you get wraparound views of the behind of the ship and pretty much the port. And that was really, really cool. And then when it's sailing, it creates that surf sound that I find So, so soothing. We actually slept, I shouldn't be admitting this, but we slept with the window, the balcony door ajar so that we could hear the sound of the surf of the ship making. It was so soothing. It lulled us to sleep. It was so nice. So, so nice. The balcony was great. It was nice and spacious. We didn't really actually spend a whole lot of time out there other than just to really admire the wake and to sometimes watch the dolphins swim or the seagulls float their wings on the, it was really, really cool. We loved it. So the room was perfect. I did notice, honest review, when we came out, we saw a line of housekeeping carts too, and a vacuum cleaner there. And I was like, okay, you know, they're still busy cleaning. They're still busy putting the final touches. I was like, not a big deal, you know, cool, cool, cool. It's, you know, they got the room ready an hour early, giving us an hour to go and explore early. So it's all cool. We went, took the shuttle bus. We went and explored and did our thing out in Athens. And then we came back, it was around 5:36. We came back, those housekeeping carts are still there. And it was just kind of like, okay, are they gonna, please tell me they're gonna move them. I was like, you know, I gotta go to guest services anyway to inquire about the scissors. And I made a mention to guest services, like, is there any way to contact housekeeping and see if they can remove those housekeeping carts? And he was like, oh, they're only gonna be there for a few minutes. They move them around as they clean. I'm like, well, we actually saw them at 1 when we checked in and we noticed them, and we've come back now. It's been several hours and they're still there. And he's like, oh, okay, do you want me to call them or something? And I was like, yeah, hello. And so he looked a little put out, and he also looked put out by having to help me with my scissors. I'll get to guest services in a minute. But yeah, that was kind of like, So nothing really happened. I eventually saw the head housekeeper. She's very nice. Housekeeping was super, super nice. Housekeeping in general, they kept that room immaculate, immaculate. We had turn down service. I have nothing but praise to offer housekeeping. That was some of the best housekeeping I've ever experienced. They run a very tight ship. But I did ask her, she was very polite. I did say, you know, we noticed that these housekeeping carts are here a lot. Is there any way that you can move them? And she's like, oh, are they bothering you? I'm like, yeah, they are. I was like, you know, it just makes us feel like we're living in a broom closet. What person wants to spend the money we're spending and open their door and see a bunch of housekeeping carts? Like, it kind of, her asking if it bothered me was weird, because I've never stayed in a hotel. I've never had any kind of luxury hospitality experience where it's been okay to just leave maid carts hanging out, ever. And she's like, oh, okay, we'll deal with it. But I did notice they weren't there 24/7, but I did notice them lingering there throughout the stay. And it's like, I kind of, at some point I was like, you know, pick your battles. It's gonna really upset me to have to make a point about this, especially since the housekeeping was so good at what they were doing. But it did upset me that they didn't understand, that they diminished the experience of the traveler by making us have to see the house carts constantly. It's kind of saying, this is what we think of your rooms. We kind of treat it like it's a broom closet. You know, that point of view was lost on them. So that was kind of that's a strike against them. I hope that if they're watching this video, they make changes and realize that customers don't want to see housekeeping carts in front of their rooms perennially. It's just not acceptable. But that's the only strike I have about housekeeping. I have many more positive things to say about them. They were polite, they were kind, they were nice, and they did their housekeeping work exceptionally well. A+++ on that. Let's talk about the onboard amenities. All right, straight up, right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you a big truth about Viking that people probably won't mention. There are so many things to do on this ship that you can't actually do all of them. You are not going to be able to take advantage of all the amenities and do the port excursions at the same time. So you have to pick and choose the things that you want to do on the ship if you want to do the port excursions. And obviously, we joined the Viking Star Ancient Treasures of the Mediterranean because of the fact that they went to these incredible ports. So the port excursions for us took priority over the amenities. Whatever time we had left on the ship after exploring and exhausting the port, we would take time to enjoy the amenities. And so the top amenities that we enjoyed included the tea in the winter garden, which I absolutely loved. That winter garden is beautiful. It's filtered, soft, white light that pours in the afternoon. They have lanais on either end of the ship where if you want to take your tea, you can take your tea in the winter garden and then you can go out into the lanais and just look as the sun is setting and just kind of drift off. It was uber peaceful and uber wonderful. They had finger sandwiches, they had scones with clotted cream and jam. I had a rose tea that was just, it was so good. It was all just a really nice little snack to have around 4 o'clock, 3:30 to kind of hold you over till dinner. Absolutely love that experience. We did have, I do want to say with the tea service that tea service was very popular on our cruise. And we noticed that when we came at very busy times, the staff was very kind of like, they were really stressed out. And so we noticed that we actually at one point had to tell them, hi, we're sitting over there. Can you please help us? So there was kind of a little bit of a staffing issue when it got really busy, but when it wasn't busy, they were very accommodating. They were very nice, very helpful. They had always been helpful. The staff had always been helpful when they came to help us. The other major amenity that we enjoyed was the thermal spas and gym. They have a really decent gym. They have a Pilates reformer, they have a weight room, and they have an exercise room where they have specific exercise equipment in there with weights, treadmills, and bikes, stretchers. It's really well thought out, and we didn't ever have to compete with space. There wasn't a whole lot of people who were working out, which was great. And we were able to do whatever kind of exercises we wanted. It was fantastic. I really appreciated getting to work out. It just made me feel better because we were indulging in a lot of food. And I'll get to the food in a second, but that felt really good just to kind of have that place where we could work out. And when you finished working out, you could enjoy their thermal hydrotherapy spa system, which was amazing. Oh my God. They had this massive jacuzzi pool, which you could use. They have a swimming pool, I think on deck 7, which you could swim out right next to the winter garden. That's kind of like a proper swimming pool, although it's kind of small. But in the gym area, they had another pool that was jacuzzi. So it had jet bubbles, it was heated, super warm. And then they had 2 little smaller jacuzzis, which also had super thermal heat, even hotter than the big jacuzzi. So you could select which jacuzzi option you wanted. That was amazing. Really helped just kind of melt the tension away after a long day at port, especially because there's a lot of walking, a lot of climbing, a lot of stairs, a lot of stones, so it was like, oh, melting all that away. And then you could do an entire thermal circuit. So you could vacillate between the hot and the jacuzzis. They had a steam room. They also had a snow grotto, a frigid room where you could go in after a hot session and kind of cool down. That snow, it was like a giant snow cone room. They had tons of shaved ice everywhere. It was freezing cold. So nice after you did a heat session. You could do that cold session and then another heat session. And then they had a cold bucket shower where you could dump a whole cold bucket of water. Then you can, in the locker rooms, they had a sauna where you could go in sauna and then you could finish it off with a cold plunge. They had a cold plunge tub room in your locker room where you could finish it off with a cold plunge. And that water was freezing, but it was so nice. It was so good. It was so refreshing to have that hydrotherapy. So what was the downside about that? Well, day 3, word on the ship spread like, oh, you got to try this, you got to try this. So by day 3, it was packed. We also noticed that with the men's room, I can't speak to the women's room, but with the men's room, it got used a lot. There were like towels on the floor, there were robes discarded, and they weren't being refreshed as frequently as they were in the start when we had gone there. So I was like, it would be, you probably should have a person, a guy, dedicated to kind of just coming in and cleaning up a little bit more frequently. They also do facials, they have a hair salon. We didn't do any of that. That's for an extra charge. All of the hydrotherapy stuff was included in your package, so you didn't have to pay extra for that, which is great. After that, we went to dinner. And so I think those were the 2 amenities that we used the most. The other amenities, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was okay. It worked for the most part, uninterrupted. There were different times where it just went completely off, especially when we were on the Turkish side. And the staff was like, oh, that's because Turkey requires us to block the Wi-Fi for some reason. I was like, that's weird. And it was it was weird. It was when we were at port. And so it was just, there were times where you just could not get on, but the times were few and far between. And so for the most part, if you wanted to go on social media and scroll, you could. You could not stream on the Wi-Fi, and they let you know streaming is not available, so you can't go on Netflix, you can't go on Hulu, none of that. Can't do that. But you can go to social media and you can scroll and watch videos that are under a minute. They'll play. They played for me at least. And then of course you could stream music if you wanted. That was available. And then they had an app. Viking has an app that you should download that's part of the pre-registration. The app worked all the time while we were on the ship, and that gives you access to everything. It has the Viking Daily, which is really helpful. It has a lot of helpful information that you should take advantage of that we really appreciated. Another amenity that we loved was the laundry rooms. Each floor has its own laundry room, and the laundry is free, and you don't need soap. The soap is dispensed within the machine. So you put your clothes into the washing machine, you follow the instructions for the buttons that you want, the settings that you want, and it automatically dispenses the detergent. And then you can dry your clothes. The clothes smelled so nice. They weren't overly fragrant. They had like a hint of cleanliness and crispness, which I really appreciated because I don't like super heavy smelling clothes. But it was a really nice service, and my clothes felt clean. And so it was nice to be able to wash and to use all of those services. The downside about that, 2 things. Our laundry room was really far away, so we had to walk, which I didn't mind. That's not a downside, but what I didn't like was that you had to walk all this way to get to the machines, only to realize there's 3 washers, 3 dryers, only to realize that they're all full. So you had to really kind of figure out when the strategic time was to wash your clothes. Boarding time, when port of call was, all aboard times, those are really bad times because everybody's on board. They're like, oh, let me throw in some wash before dinner. They were always full during that time. I didn't want to leave my clothes. I didn't want to wash them in the morning and leave my clothes out there because number 2, laundry trolls. There were laundry trolls, people who just kind of hung out there waiting for clothes to wash. And the minute the cycle ended, they like flung the door open and flung the clothes out and put their clothes in. So you gotta also time, you gotta keep track of your time of your clothes because unfortunately there are laundry trolls who are waiting for that cycle to end. It's just kind of like, because you don't have anything better to do, but yeah. But those are minor inconveniences that don't even measure to the benefits of having clean clothes and being able to use the washer and dryer. So I don't want you to get the idea that the downsides are equal to the positives. The positives were 10 times better than whatever negatives there were. Another amenity that I really enjoyed too was they have great libraries. On the 2nd floor and on floor 8, the Explorers Lounge, they have these little lounges. They're so nice to just lounge. They have great books. If you like history, if you like the arts, if you like culture, tons of books to really indulge in. You can pick one and you can take them back to your room and read them. I read them there on the comfy couches, the comfy seats that they had. And it was so nice. It was so cozy. It was so wonderful. If you have an inner geek or an inner book nerd, that's the thing that you're gonna love. I mean, it's those small little things that were my favorite, actually. I love that second floor nook, past the bar, past the stairwell atrium, that you could just plop yourself on those huge seats. They're so comfortable and just dive into a book. I read several in history. I read one about Coco Chanel. It was really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things to do. You're not going to be bored on the Viking Cruise, and it's an exemplary ship. It also has a premium and luxury feel. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels expensive. It feels expensive everywhere you go. They make it a point to have original artwork everywhere in the halls. And it's really interesting work too, I have to say. They have murals that depict Norwegian history. They have little areas of the ship that go into Viking culture, like ancient Norwegian Viking culture that you can scan. You can scan and hear numbers and learn a little bit more about if you're interested in that. Let's talk about the food. Oh my God. You will gain weight. You will absolutely gain weight on this cruise. You will gain weight. The food was delicious. The food was absolutely delicious. They have 7 different places on the ship that you can eat. Again, like I mentioned with the amenities, we didn't really want to explore all the different places because when we found places that we liked and that worked for us, we took advantage of that, and that was really great. What's inside, one of the wonderful surprises is what's in the room. In the room, you have a snack bar, and all that's for you. They have little munchies, little nibbles that you can have. They have a variety of drinks that you can have, and they have 24-hour room service. So you can use room service anytime that you want. Every morning during turn-down service, they would leave with you a card, a breakfast order card if you wanted to have room service delivered to your room for breakfast. And that was a godsend because we would place our order and we would tell them what time, that you could specify the time. And so we would specify the time. That was a godsend. And so we were able to do double duty. We were able to have breakfast and we were able to watch the lectures for the port of call they were about to go and enjoy in the morning. And so that was extremely helpful for us. Massive time saver. The portions were a little on the small side, but we ordered extra. And so that took care of that. It was all really, really nice. Room service was on time. They delivered it without issue. It was perfect. And the room service was good. The food was good. The quality was outstanding. No complaints, no problems there. Where we primarily ate dinners was at the restaurant. So we had dinners at the restaurant, which was great. It's an elegant yet sophisticated place, but it wasn't stuffy. You didn't have to wear like a tux or a suit. But people were dressed in business casual, like nice shirts, blouses, sweaters, really nice, like at a semi-upscale restaurant that you would go to. There were no casual people, which was really great too. And what I loved about the restaurant was that you had one side of the menu that had classic staples like steaks, fries, chicken, mashed potatoes. And then you had another side of the menu that showcased regional cuisine based on where we were traveling and where we were at. They had cuisine that was local to the region, so you could choose what you wanted. And you could order all of it if you wanted, because that's part of the all you can eat. And so we were able to try whatever we wanted. The portions are a little small, so if you ended up liking something, you just ordered it again. And that's exactly what we did with several dishes. The desserts, the creme brulee. Oh my God, the creme brulee, give those people an award. The creme brulee, we had multiple of creme brulee. It was, you're gonna gain weight. The other place we had meals was the World Cafe. It's buffet style. The buffet style was, They had a really nice selection of food. And the great thing about the buffet is that it's quick. So we would have some of our lunches at the buffet style because it was so quick. We could pick something, get it, eat it, and then go. And that was really, really helpful as you're doing port excursions, because obviously you want to save your time for the ports. You don't want to be at a restaurant and taking 30, 45 minutes when you can eat everything in about 15. And so that's what we did. We found the World Cafe to be helpful there. We liked the options, the food options. It was great. Those were primarily the three places we ate at. We also ate at Manfredi's one night, and that was okay. And we ate at the chef's table one night, and that was okay too. I feel like they make the specialty restaurant something really super special. We had them once and we're realizing, like, you know what, let's just stick it to a restaurant. The restaurant was, for us, just as good, and you don't have to make reservations. Whereas with Manfredi's and Chef's Table, you have to make reservations. So in all, we really preferred the restaurant. We really liked the restaurant. We didn't eat at Momsen's, and we also ate at the grill. The grill's also quick too. They're making burger. It's basically burgers and fries. And I think there's like a buffet style that you can have. But we did order the burgers once. They were really quick, really fast, and that's also super convenient if you want something just really simple like that. And then of course the Winter Garden, the tea service, you get the finger sandwiches, the scones, the desserts and all that. And then they have bars, like coffee bars, like on the second floor, and they serve little nibbles too, like little desserts. If you wanted tea with a cookie or a pastry, you could order those. They were there on the second floor. It's delicious. And they also have the same thing up on floor 7 and 8, where you can have a couple of nibbles here and there. And then if you had the alcohol drinks package, that's where you would also order those too. We didn't have the alcohol drinks package. I don't drink alcohol. My husband just had the wine that came with the dinner. It's part of the package, part of the original package that you buy. When you have the dinners and the meals, I think you have beer and wine available as free of charge. Anywhere we went to the ports, we didn't actually eat because we had really good quality food at the ship. So we took advantage of that. And that's something that I highly recommend you do take advantage of, because you're, number one, you paid for it, but number two, the quality is exceptional. It is high quality. It is good quality food. What are the downsides? When you do the pre-registration, they give you, based on the floor and the room size that you buy, you have access to make reservations for Manfredi's and for the chef's table. We made reservations for both, but through some kind of glitch in the system, the reservations were dropped. And so when we showed up, and this wasn't just us, it was other passengers as well. When we showed up, they didn't have any record of our reservation. Fortunately, I had printed it out and I was like, here you go. They were flustered and it was awkward. It wasn't like how you want to have a dinner. So I didn't really appreciate that. If they're gonna make you go through the process of having to make reservations, they should be the ones that honor it. You know, to drop it is not acceptable. We also noticed that the cafe, the World Cafe, on occasion they would make you wash your hands, which I appreciated. I always washed my hands, but we noticed that, of course, it's an elderly population, and so there were people that we noticed struggling with the tongs, because obviously not everybody, as you get older, you lose dexterity, and maybe not everyone has grip and dexterity to use the tongs. And so we noticed people struggling with the tongs, but they were grabbing them with their hands from the food end and thus contaminating them. And then sometimes we noticed one woman pull something with her bare hand. And so that kind of grossed us out. You know, we don't want to get sick. And so that was kind of like, oh. So we kind of like limited our time at the World Cafe to just like when we absolutely had to eat there, we ate there. But yeah, those were kind of the downsides, but they were super minor. We didn't ever get sick. We ate at the World Cafe several times without incident of getting sick. We never got sick once. Everything looked super clean. Everything tasted great. There was nothing wrong. We had no incidents of food poisoning whatsoever. So that was great. That was a huge plus. Some of the issues that we did have were with guest services. If I had to give a big strike besides the housekeeping carts, it would be guest services. Guest services is helpful when they want to be. When they choose to help you, they're very helpful. Like we had questions about our passports, you know, when the Greece people took them, we're like, when are we gonna get them back? They explained the process to us in a very easy to understand way. They took care of it. We really appreciated that. They were very kind and considerate. But when I wanted to get my scissors back, he was just like, he looked visibly annoyed, like, you're wasting my time for this. And then when we called guest services regarding the reservations that had been dropped, she was like, well, what do you want me to do about it? She didn't say it like that, but the tone was like, well, what do you want me to do? She's like, why don't you just take the reservation to the desk and show them your reservation? Okay, good luck. Like, it's like, okay, thank you. It's good to know that you're there to help us. You know, I didn't feel, that was the only area that I didn't really care for was guest services. I feel, and I understand that their job is stressful, but they could work on not being so snooty. It would go a long way. But fortunately, that's the only other strike that I have about Viking that's like, I think needs work. But other than that, everything else was really, really good. With regard to the announcements, they send you a Viking daily every single day. You get it the night before in your turn down service, so you have access to it. You need to absolutely read every single word on the Viking daily. It has tons of helpful information, but it also has really specific information about each port that you need to know. Little nuanced logistical bits of information, like this port, you can't just walk out, you have to take a Viking bus to exit, or this port requires you to have a special guest pass. You need to have that guest pass with you at all times. This port, do that, you know, there's all these little specific little bits and pieces about each port you go to. The Viking Daily has that in their bulletin. It also has a lot of detailed information about the port that you're going to go to, like certain phrases, certain words, certain shopping excursions that you might want to enjoy, things like that. And then it has a timeline of all the different things that you can actually do on board on the ship. Like, so let's say you didn't want to do a port excursion, you just wanted to stay on the ship. There's classes, there's movies, there's all kinds of activities, entertainment, all kinds of activities that you can do while you're on the ship and just enjoy it there too. Another thing with announcements that you need to be aware of is they make announcements on the ship, but some of them are ship-wide, meaning they come into your room, and then some of them are just in the hallways and in the public areas. And that was really confusing for us because of the fact that our rooms are soundproof. And so they would be making announcements about the port, like, hello ladies, hello passengers, we've arrived at this port, here's a couple things you need to know. And we would hear like a muffled sound, we're like, oh, is that an announcement? And we'd open the door, thank you so much, and we hope that you enjoy your time here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And then the announcement would end and we realized we missed what they were gonna tell us. And fortunately, they repeat the information on the daily, so that's why it's so important to read the dailies, as well as in the port talks that are also part of the video series that you can access on demand. So there's port talks and there are the lectures. You can attend the lectures and the port talks in person, or you can view them video on demand a little bit later in the night, like after you've had dinner. We viewed them in the morning, right before we were getting ready to disembark for the port excursions. That was extremely helpful. The port talks the lectures were extremely helpful because they give you anecdotes and history. They go into the ruins and tell you about the history of the ruins, the players. They give you the major headlines and just enough information to give you a nice understanding, a nice foundational understanding of, okay, this is why this city is so important. This was the history. This is what we need to know. Okay, so it primes you really well without overloading you. The port talks by the cruise director were not as helpful. It was filled with, because they were done live, it's filled with a lot of fluff and a lot of conversational banter. Like, who knows the word for hello in Greece? Aha, you get 10 points. It's kind of like a lot of that back and forth. And when you're watching it on demand, you're just trying to fast forward to it to get to the points that are important. Like, oh, in this part, you're going to need this pass, or be aware that, you know, when you see this city, if you take a left, you're going to be looking at this building. And it's really, you have to, I didn't want to watch the entire port talk because it's like an hour. It was really long and I didn't have time, and I just wanted to get to the important bits. So I feel like they should make a presentation up front on the port talks of like, here's what you need to know. Bullet points of like, these are all the important things. If you want to know more, read the daily or go into, you know, fast forward into the actual port talk on demand. That would have been more helpful. But again, if you read the Viking Daily, it has everything. So read it from the first word on it to the end word at the very end, because it does have super helpful information, everything you need to know about that day. Another wonderful thing are the excursions. So with your package, you get excursions that are part of your package. Or if you don't want to take the free ones, you can also opt to pay for additional excursions that they have, that Viking has for that day. What we opted to do was we only did the free excursions and we took advantage of those days. I looked at each port and I did my own research. And there were certain things, like for instance, at Heraklion in Crete, Gnosis Palace was a separate excursion that you had to pay for on Viking. I didn't want to pay for it. And so I did the free excursion, which was we went to the cultural center and the history center, and we got to see a bunch of artifacts, which was great. But that was in the afternoon. And so what we did was in the morning, we took a taxi from the city center in Heraklion that drove us to Gnosis Palace. We got to see Gnosis Palace on our own. They have an audio guide that you can use from your smartphone. So we just did that. And we got to see it on our own without having to pay. And then we took a taxi back to the center, took a shuttle back to the ship, and then we joined the expedition excursion in the afternoon. So you have the option to do the excursions, the free excursions that come with your package, or you could pay for separate ones, or you could do whatever you want on your own end. But you are responsible for getting back on time. That's on you. Don't mess that up. Fortunately, these are very small places, so it's really hard to not make that port of call, but don't be that person that ends up getting left out, you know, left behind because you didn't make it out on time. Another important thing about the excursions that I found really helpful was I loved the fact that they were native guides. They were guides that were native to the area. They had some kind of academic background, like they were history teachers or they were professors or they wrote books about the places. And so that was really helpful to get that kind of native understanding, that native point of view when we were looking at historic sites or we were at museums. They kind of helped show us like these, I'm going to take you through the museum. I'm going to take you through the most important parts of the museum that really are going to give you a foundational understanding. A lot of the museums that we went through were huge. And there's just no way in 3 hours that you're going to be able to process everything. You got a lot of information coming at you fast and furiously. And what I loved was that they kind of expedited that for us. They kind of digested what the important parts were, showed us the greatest hits to give us a little bit of a nice understanding, and then they gave us the rest of the day. You know, we had a lot of time afterwards. If we wanted to break away from the group to go and explore more of the museum, we could. Or if we wanted to go and walk out and explore the city, we could. There were so many different options that we could do for the port excursions that came with the package. I really appreciated that. I go deeper into detail about what we did for each day on separate videos, so you can watch those if you want to get a deep dive of each city. But in general, with the Viking experience, that's what I loved. What was the downside about excursions? So even though the Viking Star was a smaller ship, there were a lot of excursion buses. And so when we all went to the museum, suddenly the museum became packed, congested with Viking people. Like there were some parts that were really, you were like struggling to like see the things that the guides were talking about. And so that became a little like artificial congestion due to a surge in Viking people all at once. And they even staggered the crowds too, right? But even then, it was still very packed because you also have other cruise ships that are also coming in. And so you have other contingents also coming in at those times. So at certain times, they got really, really congested. I also love that they have Vox boxes. So it's a little audio box that you put in your earplugs, and the guide is talking into a microphone, and they could be ways away and you can hear them perfectly. So you're not struggling to like, what did they say? That's all taken care of, which is great. So those were the good, that's what was the downside, was the congestion. And some of the guides, they all spoke English. They all spoke English very well. But the thing about English, the tricky thing about fluency in English is that conversational English is one thing, but then talking and explaining and articulating academic things, historic narratives that require precision with language is an entirely another thing. And there were a couple of guides where when they were explaining a particular historical event or an explanation, they would use words or they would use turns of phrases that were like, what did they say? Like, what was that? What? What do they mean by that? You know, and you're just trying to like figure out what they're trying to say. By the time you figure it out, they've already left to the next thing. And the tours are not designed where you can stop them and ask questions. You might have one person that asks a question, but then they have to move on because there's groups behind you and there's groups in front of you, and so you just have to keep moving. And so that was a little bit of like and that's very minor. It wasn't like bad, because at a certain point in the tours, you're just kind of exhausted. You've taken in 20,000 dates, 20,000 names. These people invaded these people at this date, and then this happened at this date with these people, and then these people came in, and you're just like, wah, 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 wah. So you're just trying to get a couple of the headlines. You're just trying to understand what the basic storyline is. You're like, okay, this is okay. Got it. So you're not inclined to like, oh my God, I missed that really important detail. You let it go because at certain points your brain is just like, I need a rest. Another point about the people, that I found the people to be fantastic. I had wonderful conversations. I went up to strangers and asked them, how is your cruise going? And it turns out that a lot of them were first-time cruisers too, and we all made the same complaint. We're like, did you have trouble finding stuff online about what the cruise experience was like? And I was like, yes. And I was like, this is why I'm making the video, to share with you what it's like on the inside. But the people were wonderful. We ended up meeting a fantastic couple, and had a great conversation, had a series of conversations with them, made friends. We had conversations with a whole group of people. Every day we were getting to meet people who had very fascinating lives, doctors, professors, teachers, business executives. It was really a great crowd of people who are doing interesting things with their lives, and it made for wonderful conversation. And we never felt like, we were never lonely. We were like, oh, there's nobody here. There's tons of people to do things with. On the excursions, you can make instant friends. That was one of the positive things about the people I absolutely loved. What was the downside about the people? There were a few that kind of behaved in an entitled way. There were a couple of people, you're given very specific times where you have to meet the bus. And there were a couple of people who were like 20 minutes late. And it's like, you're holding up the entire bus. Like, don't be rude. And then, and then they would forget their Vox boxes. And it's like, I forgot my box. Do you have an extra one? It's like, lady, get yourself together, you hot mess. And then there were also people who complained, like, I didn't realize you're gonna have to walk all this way. And it's like, Viking has very explicit details about each excursion. Like, they tell you this is a moderate walk. This is how much you're gonna walk. This is, it goes into detail, and people were like calling those people out. They're like, oh no, it said that it was gonna be excessive walking in this tour. You should read the thing. It said excessive walking. So those people were put in their place, but they were few and far between. The vast majority of people were really nice and really fun. And what's also great too, if you're a single person going, or if you're going with a couple, or if you're with another person, you can actually, when you get to the restaurant, you can actually choose to be part of a bigger table where you can actually get seated with a bunch of other people to meet them. And we saw those tables and they had great conversations. It was wonderful to see it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can also do that. And we ended up doing that with a lunch. We ended up having lunch with a group of people that we had such a great time with. So yeah, it was good. It was a really, really good experience. I highly recommend it. Feel free to reach out and say hi to people. You might get a curmudgeon here and there, but the vast majority of people are really cool. They're really interesting to talk to. They had interesting stories to offer. It was a cool time. It was a cool time. So would I recommend Viking? Without a shadow of a doubt. They live up to their promises. They deliver. I would give them an A minus. I would give them 5 stars, A minus. I think the money they ask for is worth it. I think you get what you pay for. Even though you don't use every single amenity, you definitely walk away feeling like, the price I paid matched what I got. It's fair. It's a good deal. It's a really good deal. If you're looking for a premium product, Viking is your cruise detail. Would I do a Viking cruise again? Absolutely. But I would do it specifically for certain locations, like the ancient Mediterranean treasures, because again, going to Crete, Rhodes, Ephesus, and Kusadisi, in Troy, in Çanakkale, those are all hard to get to places. Getting to Athens is easier, getting to Istanbul is easier, but getting to all those places would have been really, really a headache and stressful. And so they provided that convenience, and I'm super grateful for it because we got to do it in luxury and in premium accommodations. So it was really worth the money. I would pick and choose though. Like I probably wouldn't do ones where it's easy access to cities, but ones where it's maybe off the beaten path. I would probably give the expedition to Antarctica a try, but not now. Maybe 4 or 5 years down the road. Something about the Drake Passage that just terrifies me. Maybe it's a past life, I don't know, but yeah. Viking is definitely worth the money. My experience on the Viking Star, based on that, I would definitely recommend the Viking Star to anyone who's interested. Drop a comment if you have any questions, happy to answer them. And if you want more explicit information on the pricing as well as the pre-registration information, visit my website. I have that written story. You can print it out. It's for you. And if you want more information on the extensions and the day trips, check that information out on my website and my platform as well. Take care.